Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Hi, Rangers. It's me, Jackie Kashian. Welcome to the Dork Forest. It's 2024. Let's do this. Here's the credits, of course. Mike Ruekberg sang that song at the beginning, and he wrote that song, and he sang it with Sarah Cohen, his wife, and he will sing the Mexican hat dance at the end of the program. Also, Patrick Brady, still putting this together. Video, audio, all of it. He's amazing. So, and Vilmos doing JackieKashianStore.com. Squarespace is doing the regular Jackie Kashian page, and I'm thinking of moving the Dork Forest and dorkforest.com away from WordPress because it's driving me nuts. But those are the credits. But if you go to JackieKashian.com, you can get Dork Forest merch. You can get my stand-up merch. You can get my stand-up CDs and DVDs, which you'd have to have devices for those. You can also see videos and find out any number of things. I have another podcast called The Jackie and Laurie Show, but the Dork Forest is the flagship. 18th year. We're doing it, you guys. You can go to my Bandcamp or my YouTube for extra content. Please donate, is what I'm saying. It's 2024, and I think we've been in this long enough. Why don't you guys, everybody send me $100? That's what I'd like you to do. You can PayPal me. There's links all over the pages. You can Venmo me at Jackie Kashian. You can find me at a stand-up show and hand me a sweaty wad of 20s. Do something. But I love doing the show. I would love to make some money, is what I'd like to do. In other news, I'm sure there's more things that I should talk about, but I can't think of them. But let's listen to who's going to dork out about something, because that's my favorite part. Thanks for listening, you guys. You're all great. Let's get into the show. Oh my gosh, Rangers of the Dork Forest. I just met this guy in a town that I've fallen in love with. He's got, he's whatever. It's Seth Milstein. Rangers, welcome to the show, Seth Milstein, Dork Forest.
Yay. I'm excited to be here. I've been a listener for a while.
Right. And it's, we're about to start our 19th year. Very exciting.
Yeah. I listened very early. I was an early listener for a while. Because I used to have a job where I didn't interact with people for 40 hours a week. So
that's a great way to listen. That's a great way to get some podcasting in.
Yeah, I may be responsible for the podcasting boom myself.
Right. And I always love hearing from people who listen to a lot of podcasts at like speed. Like 1.5?
Oh, no, I never did that because I just wanted to make it last. I may have slowed it down.
Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
Seth Milstein, stand-up comic, you guys, at Seth Mills, SethMils on the Instagram.
Correct.
You have a podcast called Hope Fiends.
Correct.
And that is on wherever you get a podcast. Hope Fiends, Fiends, I believe.
It's definitely on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and I'm working on getting it up on YouTube, but it's difficult and I'm lazy.
Oh, and it's fiddly and you're
I'm
not
busy.
lazy.
Yeah, I'm
you have
busy.
a life to lead.
It's converting files, which is a pain in the ass.
You helped me do a one-nighter in Eugene, Oregon that I had never done before.
We expanded it to a two-nighter.
Right. I did World Pies with you probably 7 years ago, right?
Yeah, right before the pandemic. I would say probably 5 years ago. We did it twice, and you don't remember one of those times.
Oh, well, stone cold sober, you guys. And but I don't. But Olson Run Comedy Club, I'll remember that.
Yeah,
and that was a good time, and that is now a full-time comedy club that you are helping. True. Yeah, and you're working at a fair amount because it's your home club now, right?
It is. It sure is. The Olsen family has been very kind to me. They're good people. It is a family-run club,
and the food is better than it has any right to be. Because it is a comedy club, and they have chosen not to go to Costco and buy a case of taquitos.
Right.
So played.
No,
Olsen
it
Run.
is really good.
You're going to be there a couple of times. In August 23rd, you're featuring, and then you're going to headline. Or no, you're going to feature again November 22, 23?
Correct. Yes, I'm featuring in August. I'll be featuring for Simon Gibson, who is hilarious, and then I'm going to be featuring for Jason Mewes of the famous Jay and Silent Bob.
which is an excellent way to get into what your dorkdom is. I told you to pick something, and you picked many things.
Yeah. Well, then, you said pick up to 5, and so I gave you a list of my 5 dorkiest things.
Right, the 5 things that you love, kind of that you think about the most right now.
Yeah.
And then, so I picked one of those, and it was your movies of the 70s and 80s.
Yep.
And I said pick 5 of your favorite movies of the 70s and 80s, and you gave me quite an eclectic mix.
Yes, I did.
which is good.
Yeah.
I have seen all of these except for the first one, Godfather 2.
What? Jackie, what's going on?
I know.
What's happening?
I know it would be shocking. I thought I would open with the shocking.
That you host a podcast called The Dork Forest, right?
I know. I do host a podcast called The Dork Forest. I didn't enjoy here's what I know that it was very well done. Mm-hmm. I understand there was also a great deal of tension in The Godfather.
Yeah.
At the end of The Godfather, there's going to be some spoilers, you guys.
Yeah.
At the end of The Godfather, when there's that long shot where she looks at him.
Yeah, through the door.
Through the door, and somebody kisses his ring. I thought, well,
Clemenza.
this relationship is never going to work out. I don't want to know anything more about this family.
Yeah.
And that's where I left it. I understand the second movie is actually better than the first, which means that it's probably more murdery and more quippy and more tense.
Yeah. I think the reason that I love that one a little bit more than The Godfather, because I think The Godfather 1 is a perfect movie. And I think The Godfather 2 is as good as 1. But Godfather 2 is 2 movies because they made a sequel and a prequel at the same time. And so you're seeing the what happens after Godfather 1 with the character of Michael Corleone, played by Al Pacino. And then there's flashbacks to Robert De Niro playing his father, who was played by Marlon Brando in the first movie. And you're seeing his rise to power from being a guy who works at an olive oil store in downtown Manhattan, and
you gotta start somewhere,
and then becomes the
Godfather.
The Godfather, yeah. And so it's I like certain parts of it. Like I love the fact that you're seeing 2 actors that are kind of in their prime, like 2 of the guys that were at the top of their game. In their prime, and they never have a scene with each other because
that's Al Pacino and Robert De Niro.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And they never have a scene with each other, but they are also acting their asses off in this movie and kind of earning their known.
It does sound like it's kind of
acclaim.
two separate films in that case. Is it extra long?
Oh yeah, they are all way too long. Every
are they
Godfather
all 3
movie,
hour? Okay,
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, especially there's director's cuts and stuff like that. And and so yeah, they're all extremely long. And I would say it's justified for the first 2 because the first one is just so good and it's so beautiful. Like I feel like every shot is like could be a painting. And then
you don't think there's any extra? There's no extra scenes, or you know how they say that some movies there's just every scene is perfect. It doesn't need to be cut. Doesn't need to be. tweaked.
I don't know about that. I think that I think everything needs to be in there for every one of the arcs to be satisfied, but I don't think every arc needs to be in there to satisfy the story.
So you could have shortened it if you would have removed an arc or 2.
Right.
But it's a beautiful thing to not have to.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll watch it in its entirety every time because I love it that much. But
do you have a director's cut? Is the director's cut?
Well, now it's like everything's streaming, so I just look up which app I need to watch it on. I do have a hard drive with the director's cuts of all 3 movies, and I will. Okay. I've seen Godfather 3 one time, and I don't think I'll ever watch it again.
Well, that's interesting because I have 4 brothers, and they will not stop talking about The Godfather.
Yeah.
So just so you know, it is definitely a thing. It is, and I've tried.
Mhm.
I gave it a shot, and then I decided that I don't have to like everything. I mean,
No,
and
you
that's the
don't.
great thing about the Dork Forest.
You don't have to love everything.
Right. But it,
I had a joke in my act that the Barbie movie ruined because they just did a visual representation of my joke. But I had this joke about like, why do dudes have to force our movies onto the women in our lives? And they do it perfectly in the Barbie movie, so I immediately dropped it out of my act. But they use The Godfather as the movie, and in my joke, it was Goodfellas.
Okay,
which is just Martin Scorsese wanted to make The Godfather, and he was like, "What if I made The Godfather in the '70s?" And then he did. But
right,
yeah,
right, and right, Goodfellas. I would say Miller's Crossing,
fantastic.
Felt
movie.
like
Love that.
fantastic movie, but it felt like The Godfather without the glow filter on it.
Yeah,
yeah. Just sort of like it felt like those guys, just wannabe guys, a little bit more realistic is what it felt like.
Yeah.
I also will never see Miller's Crossing again. I'm good.
Yeah.
It's so dark.
It's that's one of those movies that I watch every once in a while. So it's I think there's certain movies that are so dark like that that I can watch over and over again. Mystic River. Mystic River is a movie that it's really disturbing to me because it deals with a lot of like pretty heinous subject matter. But I think the acting in that movie, like Tim Robbins and Sean Penn, are so incredible in that movie that I'll just watch it just to watch like their work.
To watch the acting, that's an interesting idea. It's I have said this before and I'll say it again. I'd rather die by means of open water than watch the movie Open Water, just because of the tension. Because it's hard for I have a hard time with tension in British murder mysteries, and there's none. There's literally, guess what, Jackie? It's all going to work out. So, but I will say that there are amazing, like, I know that it's beautifully done. I know that it's incredibly well acted and well shot, and what do you think, The Godfather 2, what do you think the story, the difference between Godfather 1 and Godfather 2, what do you think the story difference is?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned, it's two stories that are completely separate and really like only intersect. If you like, you could watch half of The Godfather 2 and then watch The Godfather and then watch the other half of The Godfather 2. I mean, and
it'd be
because of like that's basically what it is, a prequel and a sequel. But I think it's a good story. I mean, it gets a lot darker because I mean, I'm not going to feel bad about spoiling a movie that's
from 1972
about 50 years old.
Yeah, you're doing fine. You're doing great.
But yeah, like he has to, like, Michael has to have his brother killed in Godfather 2. That's a thing that happens. And so it's like the family gets darker and he's in this constant struggle to try to legitimize the family and get out of organized crime. But because he's got it in his blood, he has to do a bunch of organized crime shit. And so, yeah, I do think that there's like a really good, it is really good storytelling. And
two things I will say this is that I never knew that he killed his brother, and I have been listening about this movie for the last 40 years. So
remember, you said you've seen the first movie. In the first movie, Vito Corleone gets shot at one point, and his son Fredo is with him, who's the family idiot.
And this is, I know that it's Fredo that they have to kill because it's always, the jokes are always about Fredo.
Yeah.
And, but
he wasn't smart enough to live.
Right. And, was he, and then there's the brother who isn't a brother, right? The blonde.
Yeah. Tom Hagen, played by Robert Duvall, was Sonny's childhood friend that was orphaned or something like that. And they just, Vito Corleone took him in. and then made him a lawyer.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And then what this reminds me of is, how the Kennedy family was into organized crime in the 30s and 40s, and then they cleaned themselves up.
Yeah, and that it's basically like
they're trying to do that, right?
There are a lot of parallels to that particular story. Like they I think they kind of aped a little bit from real life in the Kennedy thing. Yeah, they're trying to clean up and be a Vegas casino owning family in Godfather 2.
Oh, okay. And then but the thing
they went to Vegas to avoid organized crime.
Right. I was like, because the difference between the Kennedys and the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and all those guys, they bought libraries. They put money into museums. They did educational stuff. Meyer Lansky and the dirtbags of Vegas made Vegas, right? Yeah. There's a book called Havana Nocturne that you might enjoy.
I haven't read it.
It's about the history of Meyer Lansky trying to turn Havana into a Cuban Las Vegas.
Okay, yeah.
But the year he chose was 1959.
Yeah.
And so by 1962, there was trouble.
Yeah. Hyman Roth is the name of a character in Godfather 2 who is that guy.
That's that guy. Okay.
He's a Miami dude who's doing
Meyer
a lot
Lansky.
It's totally Meyer Lansky.
Okay.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. I did know about that, but I just didn't know the name of the book. But,
yeah. I sent it to my dad. The reason I can't do Godfather movies is because my father was marginally attached to the mob in Milwaukee, which, by the way, the mob in Milwaukee is exactly those words. It isn't even Chicago.
Right.
It's not the Sopranos.
Right.
We're talking Frank Pulaski. It's different.
My father was marginally attached to the Gambino family, which was famously run by John Gotti. My father
East Coast.
Yes, my father worked at a strip club, and at one point he mysteriously got bumped up from bouncer to manager of the strip club, and his deal is that he would handle all of the legitimate parts of that business, like scheduling the bartenders and performers, managing, and then there was also a room in the back that he didn't really go into a lot, but
okay. And so I mean that's what sort of draws us to these stories, but just because you're like, oh, would I have been that guy if I would have had that chance? And you're like, I hope I wouldn't have been that guy, but I knew enough of those guys to not even want to hang out with that guy.
Yeah.
So, but I do understand the draw. I do definitely.
Yeah. There was famously not that famously, a guy who was another strip club owner in New York City at the same time that my dad was doing that, wrote a book called Scores, which was the name of the strip club he ran. And so I found out later that a bunch of people, because my dad, basically a bunch of money went missing and they were looking at my dad. And I remember this from when I was a child. We were going to move to Florida and change our names, is what my mom said. And and then like this guy called my dad who worked there, and he was like, "Hey, come downtown. I got to talk to you." And my dad thought he was going to get whacked. I found all this out later, and because I was 4 or 5, and and we went downtown. And I remember my dad getting out of the car and putting a gun in the back of his belt. And he was going to talk to a guy that I knew as Uncle Steve, and and then he was just telling him that it had not happened, or they had found who had taken that money, and it wasn't him,
and he was okay.
So my dad got out, and he went back to driving a cab, which is what he did before he got into all that. And I got a call years after my father died. From a guy who used to work with my dad. And he was like, I was good friends with your dad. I know your mom. I knew you when you were little. And he goes, we thought that your dad turned state evidence. And then we found out. And I was like, that's impossible, because my dad never changed his name and just was a cab driver in the same city that all that stuff happened in. And he goes, we found out it was the guy from Scores who had actually ratted everybody out because he did a tell-all book. And so, yeah,
Oh, there you go.
I guess some people thought that my dad was a rat for a while, but he was just trying to be a guy who didn't have to fear for his life with his family.
Well, good for him for getting out. That's never a movie that works.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next movie I'm going to pick is another sort of serious movie, which is The Pope of Greenwich Village.
Right. Pope of Greenwich Village, which is, I don't think is a good movie. I'm going to say that.
But you love it so.
I love it. I think I watched it recently and I was like, oh, this movie doesn't end. It doesn't really have an end.
I have to tell you, I saw it and I don't remember it. What is it?
It's a movie about two low-level addict crime guys, like really low level, and they're trying to make a score. Dudes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that there's a gambling problem. They and at one point they end up taking out a kind of a big mob guy.
Okay.
And then like the end of the movie, and this happens a lot in 70s movies, the end of the movie is like, well, we're just going to freeze frame and that's it.
And wait, and then do they do that writing where this guy ended up becoming a librarian?
No, it doesn't do that. It's
Indianapolis.
Like what happens is they kill this guy, and then they're like, well, what are we gonna do now? And he like puts his arm around him and he goes, I guess we're gonna go to Florida. And then they walk down the street a little bit, and then it freeze frame, and then credits roll, and that's it.
Weird.
So it's just like, but it's Mickey Rourke.
Okay.
And Eric Roberts and Burt Young, who's the guy that played Adrian's brother in all the Rocky movies, Paulie.
Okay. Oh, right. Sure.
He plays the crime boss guy, and then so yeah, it's Mickey Rourke and Eric Roberts, who are just at that point in both of their lives where they were sweating cocaine the entire time.
Oh my God!
Just are clearly out of their minds on coke, but also acting their asses off. And I think I love that movie because it reminds me. There to
be a sequel?
I don't think so.
Who directed it?
I think that it's probably a great book or something. I'm looking up who directed it right now because I completely forgot.
I'm also curious of who wrote it, because I bet you're right. I bet you it was a really good book that was adapted.
It was directed by Stuart Rosenberg, who you remember
from
directing that. No. Yeah, he directed a lot of movies in the 70s. He directed hold on a sec. He directed Cool Hand Luke. That's his biggest movie, which is another
real.
That's another phenomenal movie, but it's 60s, so I didn't put it on the 70s and 80s movies list.
There's I tried to look up who wrote it, and I got David Grusin wrote the song. It might not have been a great movie.
It turns out it wasn't written. They just kind of improv the entire thing.
They're like, here's an 8-ball. You kids enjoy yourself.
Go for it, guys.
What?
Vincent Patrick apparently was the writer.
Okay.
Of the book, of the movie, yeah.
Vincent Patrick. Sat there and watched movies that are not, let's even say, not critically acclaimed, to being just genuinely terrible. What do you love about it? I
was going to say this earlier. I think I love that it feels like my childhood. Like there's kind of like, it's New York. It's a New York movie. And,
and is it set in the city? In the city of New York?
And it's the 70s, and it just has the vibe of like what I remember my childhood looking like. You know,
them just wandering around the city, just
bad haircuts and worse clothing, and like
you were
there was
a child
malaise.
Just watching.
There was I always say this. There was a malaise of depression, which I really think was prevalent in 70s New York, late 70s New York, especially because that's the only one that I remember.
Did you grow up in New York City?
I did. I grew up Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan. We moved around a lot because money was tight and stuff.
Fair enough. But your dad was a cab driver in New York City. My dad was a cab driver.
My mom and dad met because they were both cab drivers at one point.
Interesting.
And they met through that. And then
I saw that sitcom Taxi. Was it like that?
Yeah, my dad loved Taxi.
Oh, did he?
My dad loved Taxi because it was the way it was, and then he loved MASH because he was in the army and he was stationed in Korea at one point, but he wasn't there during wartime. So
no, it's like did he come in between Korea and Vietnam? Is that when he was in the war?
Yep.
Your father is probably the exact same age as my father.
But my father's not an age anymore, but he would have been. He was born in 1940, so he would have been 84 right now.
Right, and my dad was born in 1938, so 37, something like that. And
they probably would have loved talking about being salesmen because my father was a traveling salesman up until he became a cab driver.
Yes, and my father would have loved he loves hanging out with men.
Yeah,
he thinks it's just
my dad does too.
He's just a guy. And but I will say that when the first time I went to New York City was in 1984.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a malaise.
Yeah. It was before Disney got involved. It was before MTV.
It might have been 85, actually, but whatever it was, I went to Times Square and I saw the word arcade and I played video games and it did not mean the same thing.
That was a different. You may have walked into my dad's bar.
I might have walked into your dad's bar, and then I walked out of your dad's bar.
Yeah, very quickly.
That's the way it goes. So Pope of Greenwich Village, though, Mickey Rourke. I know that Mickey Rourke and Eric Roberts were considered like so cool. It must have been the Coke, I think, and that's why they got a lot of work.
Yeah, and I think they were nightlife guys, and
there you go.
I think they made a lot of deals in back rooms of parties where they were doing Coke with producers.
Right, and then all
stuff.
of a sudden you get to be in a movie. Yes. Let's go to something else that was also very dark, but not dark, but so this one I saw, and I saw a couple times, which was Do the Right Thing.
Yeah. I remember that summer. In the beginning of Do the Right Thing, they do a shot of all the newspapers on the stand at the time. And those were real newspapers from a heat wave when it was inconceivable that New York City would get 100-degree heat.
Right.
And now it's like every summer.
Right.
Climate change is not real.
Right, exactly. Heaven forfend that there be a national health organization.
Right. But yeah, I believe it was like the summer of 87 or 88. And I remember there being a riot in Bed-Stuy. And so again, it's a
homage to New
film
York
that is very New York. And it was at a time that I was alive and doing stuff in New York and participating in the culture.
Right. And it's very much a slice of that culture of that time too.
Yeah.
It was like a real wake up call. Spike Lee did the movie itself is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Just because beat for beat. Yeah.
I think I mean, I really think he's like one of the most incredible filmmakers of like my lifetime. And he doesn't, not every movie he makes is a hit, but at least he's swinging for the fences with every movie that he makes, Right. But I think he's got enough hits in there to qualify him as a phenomenal filmmaker.
Right. What I think just groundbreaking enough that even if he didn't make more than 2 movies that everybody saw, that even if he hadn't made anything but this movie, and he's made probably 8 or 10 movies. Right?
Oh, he's made, I think, 20 to 30 at this point.
Oh, well,
he's just made amazing. He made a lot of movies that no one gave a shit about, but
or didn't make. Yeah, it didn't hit I did, because Do the Right Thing. It was literally it. There were 2 kinds of movies about Black people when I was a kid, and they were exploitation, black exploitation kind of fun. We're just going to screw around and we're going to take this genre and make it our own kind of thing.
Yeah, that's its own Dork Forest.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then
I've gone there for a while too.
Right,
I love
right.
those movies.
And those movies are great and hilarious and super fun and inclusive and have that. And then there's sort of the noble, black person kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where it's about living through slavery or oppression and all of these things. And I felt like Do the Right Thing was literally just a slice of life. He's like, this is what it's like every day.
Yeah, it was kind of the beginning of like, let's just make a good movie that's a story about people who are having this experience that is not really being put in the public light.
Right. And because what's come of it, I do think this true as well, is that because it was about race but it neither apologized nor celebrate, it didn't have anything. Yeah.
And I think it, again, to go back to New York-y stuff, it really it talks about race in a way that kind of only New York can talk about race. New York is a place where you can walk down one city block and encounter people from 30 different countries in that time,
Right. The first time I went there, it was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's a scene in that movie where it's just people yelling slurs to the camera, so it's the one guy's talking about the Jews and the other guy's talking about the Koreans and then another guy's talking about the Italians and that's kind of New York. But it's we all had this hostility and we blamed, cultures for it. But it's really just that we're all crammed into this island. and
there's just too many people in a small, right. It's a small, and now the Earth, anyway, because
the whole
it's
Earth
doubled since my birth. Yes.
Yeah.
The population. So, but I will say that, the thing that he may have, opened a door for, or what I think what Spike Lee really did for me anyway, or that I've noticed, not for me because I don't make films. Hi.
Sure.
What I've noticed is that now there can be, to some extent, casting of people as people, the absurd example, of course, is Bridgerton, where everybody is just whatever race is handy and nails the audition. Right.
Yeah.
And Hamilton. Right. And the use of that as just a showing the humanity of humans.
Yeah.
By putting them in any role, it turns out they don't just have to be like.
I love that concept of doing a period piece and just putting anybody in any role. Because I feel like if you don't do that, you have to have one scene in the movie where you explain why this is a movie in the 1800s that only has white people in it, because you have to be like, well, we have to do an obligatory everyone hates black people and no one hangs out with them scene in this movie. And I think both things are valid if done well, but I love this new era of just let's let fucking actors act. That's kind of the deal.
Weird. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're playing pretend.
Yeah.
And they can pretend that they got to wear top hats just as much as anybody else. and Bridgerton, the weird thing about Bridgerton, first season had one scene that actually addressed race. That
I have not seen one episode of Bridgerton. I've watched.
You've missed so little.
I've watched Hamilton 3 times at least, but
and as a middle-aged white lady, I've listened to Hamilton at least 300 times, and I've seen it twice.
Yeah,
and I've seen 2 productions, and I've watched the Disney.
I've just watched the movie version, or the movie version of the production, and then turned other people onto it by saying, "Hey, I will watch Hamilton again with you."
Yes, so
I just
good.
think it's well. I grew up my mom was really into theater, so
well, that's
musicals.
cool. Yeah, and being in New York as well is just an opportunity. So, so Do the Right Thing though was it's a great choice as far as a favorite movie. Do you watch that regular too?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of Spike Lee movies that I watch like where it's like every 2 years I have to refresh myself on that one. Like that one, Malcolm X.
Yeah.
I love 25th Hour.
What's 25th Hour?
25th Hour was the first movie that was set in post 9/11 New York. And but it has nothing to do with it. But it's about Edward Norton gets arrested and convicted of drug trafficking, and he has 24 hours before he has to actually go to jail, and he's going to jail for like a stretch, a long time. And so it's what he does in the last day of his life before he goes to jail, and it's just kind of like him tying up loose ends emotionally, and then going to have a party with his friends. And Philip Seymour Hoffman's in it.
Oh my God, 25th Hour?
Yeah, it's a really good movie, and I think it's really overlooked because it doesn't really mean anything.
Well, literally, when you said he had 24 hours, I was like, to prove his innocence.
No, it's not that. He was guilty.
It's not that.
He's guilty, and that is pretty obvious at the beginning of the movie. But,
and he's going to jail.
Yeah.
And so what's he going to do?
But he's a person. He's not all evil. He's not all good. He made mistakes, and it's just I think it's another showcase of great acting and writing and directing.
That's amazing. All right. Well, we have 2 more movies.
All right.
And let's which one do you want to go?
I'm letting you choose. I really like because you didn't go in the order that I wrote them, so I like what you're doing with it.
Let's save that one, which is one of Andy's very favorite movies, for the end. But Breakfast Club, I just resaw it. Breakfast Club, actually, because it was playing on USA. I felt like it holds up.
Yeah, I think
which is weird,
wise,
you wouldn't think it would.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of moments that don't really hold up.
There's all kinds of dodgy culture that don't hold up.
But
but for what it is, I think for those 5 characters, I think it actually, it's not anything that would, if any of the Breakfast Club, if some of those actions are happening now, it's just like, I didn't think it was real when it happened, right?
Right.
There's absolutely no chance that ever occurred in Oak Park, Illinois,
right,
or wherever he was raised.
Yeah. No, I think it was that kind of set the tone for me going to high school. Like that, it was like a big part about, like, I was younger than those people at that time that movie came out, but that I like the concept of, and he really, like, when you watch it now, it's like, this might not have been great writing, but it was great writing because he chose the 5 most different types of people, and they're almost not individual characters. They are almost just like artsy girl and nerdy guy and jock and outcast and princess, and conceptually, I think it's so well done.
And there is at least one exchange of dialogue that feels real in each of those tropes, right? In each of those caricatures of childhood, like there are. And whether or not you were the princess and this was the thing, or if you were the jock and this was the conversation, the jock conversation could have happened with the nerd. The nerd conversation could have happened with the guy who got beat up, Yeah.
And, there are some parts of it that just really capture like that age in high school as like this fucked up social experiment that it is,
Right.
I love like the thing where the Bender is picking on the nerd and the jock kind of sticks up for him, and it's like, but the jock's there for bullying some other kid,
Right.
And it's like,
right.
But that's the thing, is like you're an outcast, so you wanted to look cool in the eyes of these dudes who were the top of the school. so you would pick on somebody that was weaker than you. You know, it's like all that stuff was real from high school, and it's like real social shit.
It's real social stuff that sadly some people never get out of. But to put a lens on it, I thought it was a good movie. I mean, it's not a real situation that would ever have occurred. Sort of like bringing your dad to career day.
Right.
I mean, it just wasn't real.
Yeah.
But it's a parable, you know. It's just it's an acknowledgement of sort of that of the childhood of it.
Yeah, and I think they do a great job in, if you look at it like that, I think it's really, really well done.
It might be his best movie, I think.
Yeah, because I don't think any of the other ones hold up as well. I think he did Some Kind of Wonderful, which I think is a really good movie. But
I don't remember.
But I think as a complete movie, Breakfast Club is it. I think that's his best. I don't know. Home Alone 1, Breakfast Club.
Right.
Curly Sue. I know too much about the worst movies that he made.
Just 16 Candles, though.
Yeah, that one, I think you get into really bad territory because there's technically sexual assault in that movie, and
there's
and then
so
there's
much
racism, lots of racism with Long Duck Dong is the name of the Asian character.
Right. It doesn't. It literally. It felt like he wrote it in a weekend because they were like, "We love this movie, The Breakfast Club, so much. There's we're gonna make." You know, the characters don't even have those one moments of reality. You know. John Cusack and Anthony Michael Hall, and there's not a real moment in all of 16 Candles.
Yeah,
I dare someone to email me and tell me what that is.
There's the scene in Breakfast Club where they smoke weed, and Anthony Michael Hall does the old blues man voice while he's high, and I feel like he wrote, like some exec was like, we need to write a movie. Let's get John Hughes to write a movie where Anthony Michael Hall can do that for 20 minutes straight. And that's where Weird Science came from.
Right.
Because he does that character in that movie for like 20 minutes for no good reason.
And Weird Science was just a pain. It was just not good, right?
Yeah, you think 16 Candles was written in a weekend. I think Weird Science was written in an evening.
Right. A very stoned evening.
Yeah.
Did he do Ferris Bueller too?
Yes, Ferris Bueller, was raised on that one. I watched that probably 150 times when I was a kid.
Right. That one, what I need with some of these, like the thing about Breakfast Club that it has that makes it better than the rest of his films for me that I can think of offhand, is that there's some sort of redemption, right? That there's some sort of, there's an honesty to it that makes it, not that I can't watch the stuff that isn't like, I've watched Ferris Bueller, I've watched 16 Candles.
Yeah.
When she kisses the handsome guy at the end of the movie, that's a win for all nerd girls in the whole world.
Yeah.
And so
Ferris Bueller, I was watching it recently, and I think Ferris Bueller is good because it's a series of good moments. But as a story, nothing really happens. They have this day or whatever.
I think there's a couple of good scenes.
Movie. It's a movie about Cameron. He's the one that grows in that movie. Is Ferris Bueller's friend, but Ferris Bueller doesn't learn anything. Ferris Bueller just continues to be a spoiled brat. You know?
Yeah. That is literally. He feels like Holden Caulfield.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not. It's my Catcher in the Rye analogy.
Yeah,
and but the I can't think. Did he do St. Elmo's Fire too?
I don't know. I don't think so. I'll look that up because he did kind of drift into trying to do a little bit more serious stuff.
Right. There was like when he turned 30.
Right.
He was like, I got to do movies about people that are 30.
What happens when Holden Caulfield goes to college now?
Right. Well, and you say that Breakfast Club kind of made you think about that's what high school might be like.
Right.
I thought that college was going to be Animal House.
Well,
and,
thank God.
Yeah, it was not. Yes.
Yeah.
But I will say that I really wanted it to be that Val Kilmer science movie.
No, on St. Elmo's Fire.
Oh no, on St. Elmo's Fire.
Yeah, that was all Joel Schumacher apparently.
Oh, okay. I wanted
ruiner
college
of the Batman franchise for a while.
Aw, it's easy to ruin. It's just like too many fingers in a pie.
Yeah.
So, but I will say that Real Genius.
Yes,
is
love that movie.
Right, that was what Animal House. That's what I wanted college to be like.
Yeah,
and
one of my favorite comedy quotes comes from that movie where he says, in the immortal words of Socrates, "I drank what?"
Right, Real Genius is actually. I might want to watch that one again.
I did recently. I watched it with my son, who enjoyed it. My I think then 16-year-old son enjoyed it.
Oh, there you go. Not bad.
Yeah.
By the way, Rangers, I'm talking with Seth Milstein. It's at Seth Mills, SethMils. Mm-hmm. He has a podcast called Hope Fiends, and it's on all. Just look for it wherever you get podcasts. Yeah. And then
Hope Fiends with Seth M.
And he does stand up fairly often in Eugene, Oregon, at the Olson Run Comedy Club.
That's
including August 23rd and November 22 and 23 of this year of our Lord 2024.
I will be in Phoenix. Phoenix, Arizona on September 1st at Stir Crazy Comedy Club.
Go Labor. Go Stir Crazy.
I'm headlining that show. That show, but it's in Phoenix, so I forgot.
Right, and it's
that's not 117. A knock against Phoenix. It's a knock against I'm not used to doing stuff in Phoenix.
right, because you're not from Phoenix.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, the last
final movie,
Young Frankenstein.
Love it. It's my favorite Mel Brooks movie by a long shot. I think the comedy in that movie shaped a little bit of who I am as a person. Half of my heritage is Jewish, so I very much identified with Mel Brooks' style of comedy. I think Madeline Kahn is amazing in it. I think Peter Boyle is incredible in it.
Yes.
And Gene Wilder, I don't even need to say it. He's great.
Did you get to see the Gene Wilder documentary?
No, we talked about it when you were here, and I completely. I've just been so busy lately. I haven't gotten a chance to see it, but
I've seen most of it. It's really, really good, and because Gene Wilder, I think we can say genius.
Yeah, a comedic genius, and a great actor too. It wasn't just the funny. He was. I used to. I think we rented a movie one time and just never brought it back to the video store and just stopped going to that video store. But it was like an accident. My mom was just like, I don't want to pay those late fees. We're not going there anymore. But it was called Funny About Love. And it was not one of his great movies.
Right.
But he's great in it. And it's like a very, like, I would say, if you like Gene Wilder, worth a watch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he plays Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, yeah.
Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've
only seen it twice. Andy bought me the box set of Mel Brooks for Christmas. I asked for it, and and we've watched, I believe, 2 of the 5 movies that are in it.
Okay, so what I have to know, because you said This Big, that's about 5 DVDs, maybe.
Right, but it's also a coffee table book.
Oh, okay.
So it opens, and then there's like.
So do they do everything? Is all of his movies? Do you get High Anxiety? Do you get
High Anxiety is in it, and
do you get Love Stinks? Do you get
Love Stinks was not in it.
What's the Dracula one that he did with Leslie Nielsen?
Spaceballs is sadly in it.
Okay, yeah.
Spaceballs is an error. In judgment. I was like, did you have a mortgage payment? What just happened?
I feel like Spaceballs, because I watched Spaceballs, and John Candy, great.
Sure.
Joan Rivers, great. The movie, not that great, but also watching it recently, my son loves Spaceballs. And
really?
I think that Spaceballs was not a parody of Star Wars, but a parody of the merchandising of Star Wars.
Oh.
I feel like he's doing...
Maybe I could try it again. Yeah,
I feel like he's doing like this subtle take of like, these guys took a good thing and ran with it and made it awful. And that was before the prequels. So,
right.
I think he saw the future on that one. And
okay, well, that's actually very interesting, because if it mocks the merch, and it mocks the sort of how big it got so fast and so out of hand, that might be a better way to watch it. Because I remember when it came out, I was like, I think he missed the boat on this. It's too late to do. And plus the Christmas thing had already come out, and we were like, oh,
they made their own bad parody.
They made their own bad parody.
But Young Frankenstein, but whatever, however they say it.
Frankenstein is fine.
I think is one of the greatest parodies, because he's really doing all of the
First of all, it's in black and white.
Yeah. And he's doing all of the Universal monsters, kind of like he's aping a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's phenomenal. I like, it is one of those movies. I'm not going to say that every scene in that movie is perfect, because it is a lot of Jewish dad comedy, but
right. Sure.
I'm going to say I love every scene in that movie.
You love every scene in that movie.
Yeah, Cloris Leachman. Every actor in that movie is
right. It's not a large
amazing.
Cast, but it's an amazing cast.
Marty Feldman. I bought a Marty Feldman T-shirt recently because of how much I love him in that movie.
That's awesome.
And then there's one very small scene with Gene Hackman in it, and I love that Gene Hackman was like this big actor, and he was like, yeah, I'll do this scene, and he really goes
scene?
for it. It's when Frankenstein comes across the blind man, and the blind man invites him in for tea.
Is he the blind man?
He's the blind man.
Oh my God.
He's awesome. He's phenomenal. And
I think I knew that, but forgot that. Yeah. I love Gene Hackman. He's the rich man Stabney Coleman.
Yeah. He really is. I love Gene Hackman was in The Conversation, which is one of the best movies ever made.
Oh, really?
Not on the list, because I was trying to do a list that really encapsulated me as a person. But
what makes Young Frankenstein is just because you think it affected your sense of humor?
Yeah, I watched it pretty early on as a kid. I read when I was a kid, we were poor, so we didn't have HBO or anything like that. So it was Channel 5 was whatever came on Channel 5 was what I was going to watch. And so I watched a lot of kung fu movies.
Was that the UHF? Was that the UHF channel?
No, Channel 5 was just I think it was
ABC
like a Fox affiliate or something like that. Yeah, but I just remember on Saturdays they would show movies all day. And they would start with a kung fu movie at noon, because it would be Saturday cartoons up until noon, and then it would be a kung fu movie, and then they would at night every Saturday they would have like kind of a movie that had been in the theaters a year or two ago, and I remember like I think I remember just
because this is actually reminding me of my childhood so much, because there was a channel that would do such a thing. So that you would, and my dad would let me watch whatever that movie was, unless there was boxing on Friday nights.
Yeah.
And then he would have to watch boxing.
I famously, in my family, not famously in the definition of the word, won $60 the night that, because of a pay-per-view, the night that Mike Tyson won the belt. Won the heavyweight belt, because there was a pool, and I grabbed a number out of a hat that my dad threw a couple bucks into. And it was the number one, because you were guessing what round he was going to get.
Okay.
He was going to win the fight in, because everyone knew Tyson was going to win, but
they broke it down to that,
to rounds, and so there was $60.
Did he win in the first?
He won
round?
in the first 30 seconds of the fight. That was his thing for the first like 10 fights of his career, is that he would like win the fight in under 2 minutes.
Wow.
He had a lot of rage.
And that's disappointing for the people who bought tickets. Mike Tyson,
yes, very much.
I'm never going to be a fan. It turns out.
There's a good reason.
It's not for me, and that's fine.
I get it.
But you get it. But the movies that they would show on Friday night, sometimes they were kung fu movies, but they would start. It was like a Saturday afternoon movie.
Mm-hmm.
That would be like an action movie. And then it would be a weird drama where my stepmother would be like, you don't want to watch this, get out.
Right.
And she'd kick me out of the house. And she'd be like, oh, thank God, there's 3 hours. And because nobody wants to watch Rosebud, right? It was like Citizen Kane came on once.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, is this one good? She was like, it's about it's Rosebud. It's Sled. Get out.
Yeah.
And I was like, did you just ruin the movie? She's like, uh-huh.
Yeah.
Get out.
She spoiled Citizen Kane for you at an early age. Thank God that wasn't on my list.
Right. You guys, I was 11. I didn't. Yeah. She was right. I didn't want to watch Citizen Kane, and I still have never wanted to watch Citizen Kane.
My parents got divorced when I was 6, and my dad took me to a movie every weekend because he was just not a guy who knew how to entertain a kid. And so that's how I got really into movies in the 80s. You know, like he took me to see Terminator when I was 6 years old. And
early days.
Should not have done that. It may have ruined my life. But I saw a lot of, and mostly he would take me to movies that I wanted to see. He would do the kids movies, but he would also be like, I think you can see a rated R movie. Let's go see, let's go see Lethal Weapon or whatever. But
the kid I used to babysit. Yeah, go ahead.
My mom, whenever she very rarely took me to movies, but whenever she did, it was always wildly inappropriate for me. Like it was like The Killing Fields or Terms of Endearment or Amadeus. And to this day, I hate Terms of Endearment. I think it's the saddest movie ever. I hate The Killing Fields because it's so depressing, and I fucking love Amadeus. So one win for Mom. One win.
The fact that she was taking you to movies she clearly alone in wanting to see.
Yeah, it was just like she wanted to see The Killing. Yeah, it was. It was all like Oscar nominated films and stuff. Like that.
She was like, I want, because she also liked theater. Right. Yeah. So she wanted to see acting.
She wanted quality. Yeah.
Yeah.
She took me to see Look Who's Talking because I really wanted to see Look Who's Talking.
Right.
And then she made us stay for Casualties of War. Sean Penn and Michael J. Fox. I was like, oh, Michael J. Fox from Back to the Future. Cool. Let's see what he looks like on a Vietnam rape trial.
I think I love your mother.
Yeah.
Good for her for finding what solace where she could find it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good for her. Yes, I will say that I used to do childcare, and the dad of this 6-year-old, they watched The Matrix together. And I was the one who had to deal with the fact that Cole Schuster couldn't sleep at night for like a month. Because he was like, are we all plugged into a machine?
Right. I didn't even think about that scene as being the problematic one. I was like, there's a lot of shooting in The Matrix, but there's not a lot of blood. But yeah, the scene where he's birthed out of a pod.
Right, where none of this is real.
Yeah. That's kind of heavy.
That's a little heavy for a 6-year-old. It's
and I was complaining about the Terminator, where a clearly fake robot is taking his own eye out. That was the scarring part of that.
But it's very much a post-apocalyptic world. Yeah. I saw the first Planet of the Apes when I was about 7. And I had nightmares for decades.
Yeah.
To this day, I still have some. I love the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
In theory.
Yeah.
I can't actually watch the Planet of the Apes.
Have you tried the newer ones?
The ones with Mark, what's his face? Marky Mark?
No, not that one. That one's terrible.
Okay.
But they made one with James Franco called I think it's called Dawn, or no, it's not Dawn.
There's a new one.
Yeah, there's like 3 newer ones
that are actually very well done.
Marky
that I'm
Mark.
told.
Yeah, they are pretty well done. And because Andy Serkis, who plays everybody that's not real, he's the guy who does all the CGI acting.
Yeah,
they do the CGI well enough that you can really see emotion in the apes, and so it's I think 2 of them are pretty good.
Well, there you go. Well,
and one of them is
not bad. Yeah. Well, we have about a minute left. All right. Let's tell people it's Seth Mills again. Hope Fiends is the name of the pod.
Hope Fiends is the pod. I have a TikTok account under Satch.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Hi, Adal. How was the show?
Well, it was really fun. You couldn't be here last week because you were at the Gen Con working on the Hero Instant. Some
thanks
Rangers
to you,
showed up.
I had enough people to run that middle game. So
right, some Rangers showed up, played the game with you, and that was super fun.
That's right.
Next week I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, and Chicago, doing the Lincoln Lodge. So if anybody's near Madison, Wisconsin, or Chicago in the next 2 weeks, they should totally come and see me do stand-up, and check JackieCation.com for the specific dates. Seth Milstein at Seth Mills was the guest comic from Eugene. Very funny. There's a new club up there that I did. I just did a one-nighter, tacked it onto a little run with Portland. It's called Olsen Run Comedy Club.
Okay.
Because the name of the family is Olsen, and they started with food trucks.
Oh.
Yeah, and now they have a comedy club.
Oh,
and it's
good
nice
for them. They have a growing empire, a growing media empire.
And the food at the Olsen Run Comedy Club is better than it has any right to be because they started out
as food people, right?
Yes,
that's great.
It is pretty great. So Seth, he works that club a lot, and then I asked him to do the Dork Forest, and he said he liked the movies of the 70s and 80s. We've been here before, but it's never the same 5 movies because I make people pick 5 movies.
Right, millions of movies made.
So many movies. Some of Godfather 2 I've never seen. Have you seen all the Godfathers?
I have not. I don't think I've actually seen any of the Godfather movies all the way through. I think I've only seen bits and pieces. Yeah.
And the references?
Right.
That horse?
Right.
I only saw the first one, but I've heard all the material. And he said that Barbie actually took a joke that he did. He had a very funny line about how, I don't know why we keep forcing the women in our lives to watch movies that they may or may not like. And over and over and over again. He said his bit was about Goodfellas, but in Barbie it was about The Godfather. And in the Barbie movie,
Yeah.
So he said that he had stopped doing that joke, but he appreciated that they were doing it at all. That they kind of nailed it.
Right. They got They got it.
He loved The Godfather too, though. And then Pope of Greenwich Village, which I've seen once.
I don't think I've ever even heard of that movie.
Mickey Rourke and Eric the Mask. Eric Roberts.
Oh, okay.
And
also great.
He said that if you watch that movie, they are so coked out that he thinks that they got the movie because they were coked out.
Is the movie about people being coked out, and so they're method acting with a lot of coke?
Right, and the producers and the directors and everybody was coked out, and they're like, we should really just cast people that we want to do coke with, and so. And then he picked Do the Right Thing, which you said you may or may not have seen, or you may.
I think I saw that one, but it's been many, many years. I mean, it was a 1980. I mean, late 80s movie, so
maybe 88.
Yeah, I think so.
That one was good. He recommended a movie. He recommended almost all of Spike Lee's movies. He said there's dozens of them.
Yeah,
and
we looked them up the other night, and there were like 27. Spike Lee has made 27 movies.
Right. I guessed 10. I was incorrect. And then, but he recommended one called 25 Hours with Edward Norton, where it's the 25 hours before he goes to jail for a long stretch.
Okay.
And that one actually sounds kind of compelling. I mean, maybe sad, but maybe not. Maybe he was a murderer. And he was like,
my hat. They're dancing around my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God. Why don't we just call that as the end of the show?